Hey, what's going on, fight fans? Hey, this is Coach D, the Wild Band, coming at you again with another episode of Coach D Media. Now, you know what I do with Coach D Media. I talk about all things combat sports related, from the highs to the lows. All right, let's go ahead and get back into it. I'm sure by now everybody knows Demetrious Johnson has just retired from MMA. Now, he didn't say he retired from combat sports. He says he just retired from MMA. So you could see him continue to do jiu-jitsu, but as of right now, he's done with MMA. And it happens to every fighter at some point. At some point, they're going to retire. You know what I'm saying? So now we get ready to talk about his impact on the sport of mixed martial arts. So he ended up, his career ended up being 25-4. Now, that's over a 15-year career in mixed martial arts, which makes that pretty good. 5 TKOs, 8 submissions, based off what I'm seeing on his ESPN stats. So they could be off, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? So, but what kind of impact would you say Demetrious Johnson had on the sport? You know what I'm saying? To me, the reason why everybody calls him the GOAT is because not his fighting career or what he's done, is what he didn't have that made him so good. I mean, granted, he was an extraordinary mixed martial artist, okay? But when you compare him to a John Jones, you compare him to a George St. Pierre, you compare him to an Anderson Silva, you compare him to, Islam or Khabib, all the ones that has been put the GOAT on them, right? What makes Demetrious Johnson different, and in an argument for pound, better? Because you got to understand, Demetrious Johnson is only 5'3", right? He started fighting in 2009, right? They didn't even have a 125 division, which is his true weight. So he had to fight at 135 to the early part of his young career, from the WBC going into the UFC, even the early parts of the UFC, before they have a 125-pound division. So he was fighting above his weight class the majority of his early part of his career. What other fighter had that against him? Not only being one of the shortest in any division, but especially 135. He was shorter than everybody he fought until he fought guys like John Dodson back then. But up to that point, everybody was bigger than him and taller than him, right? And he still only managed to lose 4 times in his whole career against fighters that are bigger than him, okay? When you compare him to John Jones is a genetic freak. He's not only tall, long arms, long legs, lanky, big, massive, right? He got tools that the average person don't have. Demetrious Johnson didn't have anything over anybody he fought other than heart and high fight IQ. That's it. That's all he had going for him, was that his will to win and his ability to get better. That's it. Right? Until he got into 125, where then he was fighting fighters at his own weight class. But then fighters were coming down from 135 to 125. How many true 125ers did he actually fight? Not many. I ain't do the stats, but not many, right? And he was still able to beat everybody, right? Except the guy, he didn't beat freaking Dominic Cruz back at 135 to 124 for the belt, right? He couldn't do it. But like I said, that don't mean it wasn't a great fight, right? Look at Henry Cejudo, guys like that. And he fought guys that were not only great fighters, a lot of them were champions. Dominic Cruz, champion. Henry Cejudo, champion. You know what I'm saying? Until he won the belt at 125, then could nobody touch him, right? 11 title defenses at 125. That means could nobody beat him. Fighters have to come down to beat him, right? So you got that. Fighters have to come down in weight, which means when they rehydrated, they went back up to the true weight. So people who fought him at 125, true 125, couldn't beat him. Couldn't beat him. Simple as that. And even the second Henry Cejudo fight, a lot of people said he won that fight because he already beat Henry Cejudo the first time. The second time, by that time, Dana White wanted him gone from the UFC. They said he wasn't a draw. Yada yada yada. Quote unquote. Henry Cejudo won. It is what it is. But that was Demetrious Johnson's road, right? He was always up against it from his childhood all the way up into the UFC, right? Dana White didn't consider him a draw, even though he beat everybody. He couldn't get the contract the other fighters were getting who were belt holders, right? Didn't trip, did what he had to do, right? After he lost to Henry Cejudo, the writing was on the wall. Here comes one championship. They did the swap, right? Now he's in one championship, becomes champion again. Win the Grand Prix, becomes champion again. Retire as champion. How many fighters have done that? Normally fighters who were considered GOAT status ends up losing on their way out the door. How many fighters have retired on top? I'm waiting. Not many. You see what I'm saying? So that's another accolade that people can say that he's retiring on top of the profession. Okay? See what I'm saying? A lot of records been broken on Demetrious Johnson's watch. But does that make him the GOAT or just a great fighter? I'm still going with just a great fighter. All these stats is what everybody talks about when it comes to mixed martial arts. Who they beat, how often they won, yada, yada, yada. How the style in which they won, the flying armbar will go down in history, just like the Hollywood kick off the fence, right? And look how long Demetrious Johnson's been in the game. WEC, UFC, one championship. How many people can say that they've been champion in two different promotions? Not many. And stars in two different emotions. Not many. You see what I'm saying? He's done it all. He has reinvented the wheel for somebody who's 5'3" more than anybody in the sport. That's what makes him the GOAT. He's just done stuff that nobody could do because there's nobody like Demetrious Johnson. Just like there's nobody like, John Jones. There's nobody 5'3" that was so dominant in the sport against heavier fighters. Look at freaking when he went to UFC. Fought, Adrian Morales 3 times, right? He lost with that flying knee from the ground, which he had to get used to. He admitted it. He says, hey, knees on the ground, took me time to get used to it. I got caught. It is what it is. Then came back and returned the favor with a flying knee that knocked Morales out and beat him again in Denver, and I was there for Denver. So I got to get an interview with him and talk to him and got to meet the guy. So one of my biggest milestones was to be able to get to the point to where I could actually have an interview with Demetrious Johnson and be of a credibility that I was allowed to be there. That was a huge thing for me, being able to meet Demetrious Johnson, who is one of my heroes when it comes to sports. I don't have very many heroes, right? Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Demetrious Johnson when it comes to sports, right? How about that? Those are my 3. So look at the caliber that I put him in. All right, he's simply just that guy. And the thing about it, what makes him an iconic fighter and great representative of the sport, as he kept it humble and he kept it about the sport, right? He didn't do any crazy antics. Don't get me wrong, he talked junk, but he didn't talk shit. There's nothing wrong with talking junk. This is how I'm gonna beat him. I don't think it's on my level. Yada yada yada. That's fine. I think I could take him. I think I could fit him in the first round. That's talking junk, right? Talking shit, talking about his parents, talking about somebody's mother, blah, 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 discrediting him or religion, all that kind of good stuff, like, Conor McGregor. He didn't do all that. He kept it professional. Anybody at any age can follow Demetrious Johnson. Anybody. No matter the age, they can follow him. They can listen to him talk. They can see what he does, and they can go, okay, he's a good role model. How many fighters are good role models, especially coming out of the UFC? Is Conor McGregor a good role model? Right? Would you follow Conor McGregor? Right? That's what I mean. How many fighters are true role models that you can see is a positive for the sport? Now, when it comes to making money, that's a different story. But when it comes to finding somebody that you can emulate, that I wouldn't mind being like of, that can possibly get you to decide to take up the sport. Okay? If you're following a fighter and all you see him talking shit, you go, do I have to talk shit in order to get into the UFC? You can get confused. He's never done that, which means that's why everybody respects him. That's why all your GOATs call him the GOAT. If you follow any of the interviews, George St. Pierre calls Demetrious Johnson one of the best of the game, right? Freaking Khabib calls him one of the best of the game. John Jones calls him one of the best of the game. You know what I'm saying? All these guys give Demetrious Johnson the props because pound for pound, if they were on equal, a lot of them say Demetrious Johnson may get him. How can you not give him that status? I'm not even saying GOAT, because GOAT is subjective depending on who's talking to him. Listen to Dana White, of course it's John Jones. But if you follow the sport from all the way up his career, you can see why he's favored for being the GOAT, considering all the things he's overcome in this sport, right? When you got Dana White give you the short end of the stick, it's hard to recover unless you're something special, okay? If Dana White says you ain't nothing, he ain't gonna let you be in any position to be anything unless you're somebody. Don't get me wrong, he'll shut up. Dana White will shit on you in a minute, right? But if you turn out to be a star, he'll find a way to work with you. He didn't consider Demetrious Johnson a star. He didn't consider Demetrious Johnson a draw. So look at that kind of pressure. Everybody else is making money around you, and you had 11 title offenses, and you can't make nowhere near some of the money that these other people are making because you don't talk shit, right? But you're one of the best fighters in the UFC. How much pressure is that? Don't get me wrong. It's not like he was broke. He was still making a belt money, right? But he wasn't getting pay-per-view points. Now he didn't even get none of that stuff, right? So he had to overcome so much just to rise up in the sport, which is what he wanted to do. His accolades, he should have been one of the highest paid in the UFC. If you look at his accolades, right? What he's done. You mean 11 title defenses? He should be making over $1 million a year. But no, it's butts in the seats, yada, 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 right? So he goes to one championship, and he wins the Grand Prix, gets the belt, holds on to the belt, loses it, gets it back in spectacular fashion. Then he has a MMA versus Muay Thai fight with Rao Tang, submits him, another iconic level. How many people in the sport can say that? That they fought not only the best of the best, so many title defenses, but able to cross over and fight other of the best fighters in their wheelhouse and still come out on top. Right? You cannot, the only thing you can do is give him respect. That's all you can do. Right? Then he goes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Right? Goes to a tournament. He's 5'3". The guy is like 6 foot, 6'1", 240 something pounds. Submits him. Demetrious Johnson, 125, fighting a man 220, 240, 6 something, and submits him. Another iconic feat. He that literally says size has nothing to do with it, and he's proved it over and over and over again in many different disciplines. So that simply puts another category where you can say he's the GOAT. Who's done that? Who's fought somebody so far above their weight class that is ridiculous and been successful? BJ Penn was early on in life. They consider him a prodigy. Could you consider Demetrious Johnson a prodigy? Okay? Because he's done so much. He's been so successful at everything he's tried to do when it comes to mixed martial arts. Even though he was given nothing, he had to earn everything he did. Everything. Everything. That's why I consider it a milestone for me to be able to get an interview with him, right? And watch him do his thing and be in the room with him live. So, to me, Demetrious Johnson is the GOAT. He's retired on top. Kudos to him. His career is beyond reproach. He's done it all. He's fought some of the best that could be fought between 125 and 135. Not easy to do, right? So the question is, do you consider him the GOAT? What do you think? I think he is. I'm happy that he's retired. And look at his podcast. His podcast is killing it. He had, 720 something subscribers already. Successful podcast. You know, after getting done with mixed martial arts, I mean, the sky's the limit. He continues, everything he touches seems to turn to gold. Right? He finds a way to succeed. family man, great kids, married, no blemishes. He ain't out in the street effing up. His name is not tarnished, unless those who hate him. But his name is solid, right? His legacy is solid. Everything you want out of a fighter, Demetrious Johnson is that guy, right? So you got to give it to him. Now, you can hate when it comes to the sport and go, hey, I think this guy is better, yada, yada. But his accomplishments, you can't touch him on that. You can't touch him on that. That's all I got. I just want to say kudos to Demetrious Johnson. He's my guy. He's one of my favorites. I'm glad he had a successful career. Came out with no injuries. He ain't brain damage. Like, he got all his faculties. He's gone down in one championship, Hall of Fame. Hopefully he'll get the UFC Hall of Fame. I think he more than deserves it. So we'll see. But it is what it is. This is Coach D doing what I'm doing, calling it like I see it, talking my share of shit. To hear from me again, peace out.